We'll start with prayer.
Father in heaven, thank you for the Scriptures and for your revelation in nature. And as we try to uncover just a little bit of that natural revelation today, we ask that you bless our thoughts. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
We've been studying the third sign in the firmament, which is the 7 bowl angels. And we're looking at the relationship between those and the 7 planets or wanderers. I'd like for you to look at page 142 and 143, which give you pictures of harps and lyres, and that's how we're going to get into this today. I need to say again that this is an area of study that I'm not terribly expert in. I don't know of anybody who's trying to integrate this with Revelation, except for some older commentators who aren't as helpful as I wish they were. And getting information on this is hard. Getting information on ancient astronomy is difficult. Now, we don't exactly live in a town with a huge amount of library resources either. So I'm probably going to have to tie this study off before I get everything out that I would like to, but we'll probably come back to it. In case you don't know the difference between a harp and a lyre, here they are. A lyre has 2 pieces of wood, one on either side, as you can see, and then a piece of wood or something else across the top, and the strings come down and are connected to the sound box underneath. Now, all stringed instruments have a resonance chamber or a sound box. You think of a violin or a guitar. A violin is not just a flat piece of wood with strings over it. It has a box. It's shaped like a lady, and so is a guitar. But that box, resonance chamber, is what makes a good violin good, and an inferior violin inferior. The sound is transformed as it comes out of that box. Well, harps and lyres have that too. The lyre's resonance chamber or resonance box is at the bottom underneath the strings. And with a harp, it's also in the bottom or in the bottom section. A harp is this curved piece, as you can see in the picture. And a large harp today has the piece across the top, and then it has the part that goes down toward the floor. And that's fat because that is a resonance chamber. The strings go down into that and resonate, and then you play it like this. And you can see curved harps here, large ones, kind you can carry, triangular ones. Anything that has that configuration is called a harp, and a lyre is something that has the configuration here. And the other kind of stringed instrument in the ancient world was a lute. And a lute is like a guitar. In other words, the resonance chamber is behind the strings. The difference between a lute and a guitar is the shape of the box. A lute has a round shape, whereas a guitar has this hourglass shape. But I didn't include pictures of that. Now, why am I doing this? Well, because, as you can see on the page with the lyres, the planets in their crystal spheres was considered a heavenly lyre or a heavenly harp. And each of these has a tone. And they make the music of the spheres. As you look out from the earth and you see the various planets moving through the zodiac or through the firmament, and the sun and the moon, as we've been discussing this now, what makes these things go? Well, the ancients didn't have the idea that they just floated in free space in a combination of centrifugal force and gravity, which is what makes them move in a circle. The moon is always falling toward the earth. But as it falls, it's got enough centrifugal force. In other words, if you zing a ball around your head on a string and let it go, it has centrifugal force and flies out. The moon, because it has motion forward, has enough centrifugal force to keep pulling it out. So if it ever stopped in the sky, it would fall toward the earth. But because it's moving forward, it tends to move out. And the moving out is balanced by the falling in. I know you had all this in high school, but it's been a long time. For some of you, it's been a real long time since you were in high school. And you know who you are. Here's the earth, and here's the moon right here. The moon wants to fall down here on the earth. But because the moon has got this zinging force moving forward, the moon also wants to go boing, way on out here, just like if you were swinging a ball around your head. And these two vectors of force combine to make the moon fall around the earth in a circle. That's how it works. It's always falling this way. It wants to fall in, but it's moving fast enough to where it's got the slingshot effect also, and it balances out to where it stays here. If you move the moon in to this point right here, it would probably spiral in and hit the earth. If the moon moved a little bit farther out, it would probably, go on off eventually. But it happens, it has settled into an orbit at just the right place. And so there it sits. Now that's what makes things go around the earth and go around the sun. Well, the ancient world, they didn't know that there was such a thing as outer space where there is zero friction, negligible friction. The reason this works, let's do it again. Here's the moon. And the moon is going this way. Why doesn't the moon gradually slow down? Because if it was encountering atmosphere out here, it would gradually slow down because there'd be friction pushing on it. But there isn't any atmosphere out here, and so it doesn't slow down. But if there was atmosphere out here and the moon was constantly pushing against air, it would gradually slow down and fall into the earth. Well, the ancient people, they had no way of knowing that if you got out over the earth, you wouldn't have any atmosphere. So they had different theories as to how these things worked, and the most common one, and the one we're going to discuss, and the one that's relevant for us, and that at least gets us into how ancient people thought, even if they didn't all think this same way, this gets us there, is that the moon is fixed on a crystal sphere. It's transparent. You can see right through it. But it's on this sphere. And it's going around the earth. And the moon is just stuck in there. So you imagine a sphere of glass or crystal. See right through it. And at one point, there's a round moon stuck on it. And it's just going around the earth. And out here is Mercury. And Mercury is going around the earth on its crystal sphere. And Venus is going around the earth on its crystal sphere. And the sun is going around the earth on his crystal sphere. And the farthest out of all is the sphere of the fixed stars. And it's going around the earth. Everything is turning around the earth. The earth is cold and dark. And it doesn't give off any light. And it has no movement. It has no spirituality. It's down at the bottom of the pit. And the only thing worse than being on the earth is to go down inside the earth and be in hell. This is a geocentric model. The geocentric model does not say the earth is wonderful, and that's why it's at the middle of the universe. And the geocentric model says the earth is cold, unlike the sun, which is warm. Which would you rather be, cold or warm? Well, you'd rather be warm. And there's no spiritual energy making the earth active. No, the earth just sits there. Whereas the spirit, the prime mover, is moving these other things out here. And the earth has no love. Whereas these other planets, they love each other, and love attracts people. So Venus is always moving forward. Mars is always moving forward. And they actually make little dances around the sky. They have these retrograde motions, which we don't need to get into. But the earth is dark. It doesn't give off any light. It doesn't give off any heat. It doesn't move. It doesn't have any of the energy of the spirit. It's the pits. But the farther out you go, the nearer you come to God, the prime mover out here, the faster you go. I mean, these spheres are moving pretty fast. This sphere is moving real fast. The outer sphere where the stars is goes around the earth in 24 hours. But it's the farthest away. man, this thing is cooking, because this is a big sphere, and it's going around the Earth as fast as the sun is. Why? Because it's so near the prime mover. And the prime mover is moving it. Or it's real near the Holy Spirit, and the Spirit is energizing it. And it's all these angels here. That's a picture. That's not reality, but it's a picture. That's how they thought. Now, how many of you have ever heard the expression, the music of the spheres? Yeah, you've heard it. Well, just listen to this hymn by Joseph Addison. You know it. It gives you some idea of thinking about this. The spacious firmament on high, with all the blue ethereal sky, the spangled heavens, a shining frame. See, a frame. The heavens are a frame around the earth. Their great original proclaim. The unwearied sun from day to day doth his Creator's power display, and publishes to every land the work of an almighty hand. Soon as the evening shades prevail, the moon takes up the wondrous tale, and nightly to the listening earth repeats the story of her birth, whilst all the stars that round her burn, and all the planets in their turn, confirm the tidings as they roll, and spread the truth from pole to pole, as they move around. What though in solemn silence all move around this dark terrestrial ball? See? Oh, the earth is dark. We want to get out of here. We want to get up to heaven, where there's lots of energy and excitement. Everything moves and dances around God. What though in solemn silence all move round this dark terrestrial ball? What though no real voice nor sound amidst their radiant orbs be found? In reason's ear they all rejoice and utter forth a glorious voice, forever singing as they shine, the hand that made us is divine. In reason's ear they sound. Well, in the ancient world it wasn't just reason. If you could actually hear it, you'd hear that these crystal spheres gave off tones as they went around. The music of the spheres. Why? Because they're like the strings on a harp. Dun, 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 dun. God set it up, and this is the celestial harp. Now, this is what Milton says on the morning of Christ's nativity. This is from Milton's poem on the morning of Christ's nativity. And all my poetry books are boxed up, but I happen to have this in a musical setting, so I can read you this section of it. Listen to how people thought, even as late, and this is just a poetic conceit. I think Milton didn't believe this was really true, but he's telling us something. When Christ is born, on the morning of Christ's nativity, Milton addresses the crystal spheres, and he tells them to do something. Ring out, ye crystal spheres. Once bless our human ears, if ye have power to touch our senses so. In other words, we don't usually hear these things, do we? But just for once, bless our human ears, if you can. If you have the power to touch our senses so. Angels can hear these crystal spheres. God can hear them, but maybe we just can't. And let your silver chime move in melodious time, and let the bass of heaven's deep organ blow. The high silver chime, the bass deep organ blow. And with your ninefold harmony, make up full consort to the angelic symphony. Ninefold harmony. Well, we've got the 7 planets. We also have the sphere of the fixed stars, so that's number 8. And the 9th, I don't know what he refers to. I don't have the ability to study this out, the whole history of this, but sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 9. The 9th may be another firmament conception or something. But you've got 9 crystal spheres here. And he says, let your ninefold harmony make up full consort to the angelic symphony. What does he mean by that? Well, he means the angels are singing, and this is the musical instrument. You are the consort. A consort is a bunch of musical instruments. Y'all know all this, right? No, you see, when we get into this stuff, I haven't even mentioned the rainbow yet, but how many colors are there in the rainbow? 7. All this stuff links in. I don't know how to link in the rainbow except that there's 7. And it's in the firmament, and it's the sign of the Gentiles, just as these other sevens are. Well, we're going to have to do a little bit with music here. The older word for a group of musical instruments is a consort. You have a consort of instruments, not a consort of singers. So this is the heavenly lyre, or the heavenly harp, that is playing as a musical instrument to accompany the angelic symphony as they sing. With your ninefold harmony, make up full consort to the angelic symphony. Such music, as 'tis said, before was never made. But when of old the sons of the morning sung, when the Creator great his constellations set, and the well-balanced world on hinges hung, and cast the dark foundations deep, and bid the weltering waves their oozy channel keep. Such music, as 'tis said, was before was never made. The crystal spheres never made this music before. Well, they did make music before, he says, but not this. This is a new song. Now that Christ has come, the crystal spheres are giving off a new song because the heavens are retuned. The strings are tuned to a new key. Now, before, when God made the world, what does it say in Job? Were you there when I laid the foundations of the earth, and the morning stars sang for joy? The sons of God? And that's what he refers to here, that Job tells us that the angels sang when the world was put into existence. Where is that? That's Job 38. And God tells Job, he says, you got to be like Israel, you got to wrestle with me. So we're going to wrestle here, and that's the whole secret of Job. Just as God wrestled with Israel to make Jacob wise and strong, God has wrestled with Job to make Job wise and strong, and that's why at the end Job gets back twice as much as he had before. His capacity has been doubled as a result of going through this experience. But God answers Job and says, gird up your loins and let's wrestle, let's fight. Let's get out on the floor and fight this out. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who set its measurements, since you know? Who stretched the line on it? On what were its bases sunk, or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and the sons of God shouted for joy. Whoa! Or who enclosed the sea with doors when bursting forth it went out from the womb? So he goes to the ocean here, and Milton is doing the same thing. He's following this. You ever stopped? I mean, we think the angels sang. Yes, they did. But it's the whole creation that's singing. It says angels run the world, right? What makes this go down? When I drop something, what makes it go down? Angels pull it down. We call it the law of gravity because it always goes the same way, because angels like to do things the same way. It's like dancing the Viennese waltz. It's fun to do it, and you do the same thing over and over again. Angels like to do it. They like to make it go down. Now, I don't know the relationship between what we call natural laws and angelic government. I don't know that we ever will. But the Bible tells us that angels run the world. Angels make this heavenly motion go. Angels make the universe sing. So let's go back to Milton. Milton says, such music, as 'tis said, the new music, before was never made. But when of old the sons of the morning sung, while the Creator great his constellations set. See, no problem with Milton. Milton says, hey, the constellations were put up there by God. He put the sky up there, and the angels sang, and the well-balanced world on hinges hung, and cast the dark foundations deep. It says right there, who laid the foundations of the earth, and bid the weltering waves their oozy channel keep. I don't need to read the rest of the poem, but that gets you into thinking. Ring out, ye crystal spheres. New song. These are retuned. The harps are retuned. Now, what has happened in the book of Revelation? Jesus appears in heaven. They're all saying, holy, 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 and all this stuff. The Lamb takes the book, and everybody picks up a harp and starts to sing, holy, holy, holy. Remember, that was the change from Revelation 4 to Revelation 5. The change from spoken worship to sung worship, and the universe is retuned. And we have mentioned this before, and we will mention it again as we go here, the retuning of the cosmos. I want you to keep this page 143 in front of you, where you've got the planets here, and look at page 141, and letter C that's on that page. And the notes say, Sidereal, looks like Sidereal, but it's pronounced Sidereal. Sidereal periods are the lengths of time it takes for a planet to return to the same position in the zodiac, in the sky, in the firmament. The order of the planets comes from these sidereal periods. And in section D, I've got a distinction with sidereal and synodic periods. Now, again, you've got to think of yourself geocentrically. You're looking at the sky, and Jupiter is moving through the sky. He doesn't stay in the constellation of the Crab all the time. He's moving around. And it takes him 11.8 years to move all the way around the sky and get back to the same place he was in the sky. In terms of the stars, that's the sidereal rotational period of Jupiter. Is the sidereal period of the planet Jupiter. We will be testing on this now. The synodic period is something else. The synodic period is the amount of time it takes for Jupiter to come into conjunction with the Sun again in the sky. See, Jupiter is moving through the sky, but the Sun is also moving through the sky in the course of a year. It takes 1 year for the Sun to get back into the same place in the constellation of the Crab. So if you've got the Sun and Jupiter together in the constellation of the Crab, and the Sun moves on and Jupiter is moving a little bit, and eventually the Sun comes back around, and say the Sun is in Virgo now and catches up with Jupiter. Jupiter is now moved from the Crab to Virgo. That's a synodic period. That's a lot shorter. For Jupiter, it's a lot shorter. We're not concerned with synodic periods here. The Bible uses them. The synodic periods of these various planets show up in the ages of the patriarchs and in the censuses of Israel, but they're not showing up here. The order of the planets, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, had to do with how fast they move in the sky in terms of sidereal periods. The Moon returns to the same place in the sky every 29 and a half or so days. Mercury every 88 days. Venus every 224.7 days. The Sun moves back to the same place in the sky every 365 and approximately a third days. Mars returns to the same place in the sky every 688 days. Jupiter returns to the same place in the sky every 11.8 years. And Saturn every 29.5 years. Now let me ask you something. Which one of these has the highest note, has the highest crystal sphere, and which one has the lowest crystal sphere? Bong. Saturn would have the lowest, and why is that? Yeah, because a long string has a lower vibration. A long string or a loose string makes a lower vibration. You have to have a long string for that. You have your harp. Remember what a harp looks like? You've got some here. This little string up here at the top goes, and then you go. The long string down here has got the low note. So Saturn is the low note. Bong, foundational. Out here next to the very firmament itself. And then the tones move up to Mercury. Which means that if you start to tune things, you're going to start with Saturn. Now, let's start with Saturn. Let's tune all this up. I would like for you to keep page 141, and look at page 138, and we're going to tune it up. Pages 141 and 138. Now, let me go back to the musical instrument here. And I'll speak kind of loud so this picks it up. We start with Saturn. There are your 7 notes. Then we repeat. Then we repeat. 7 notes. Now I suggest that's the original tuning. That's where we start. Saturn is a low note and moving up. Now the way we tune is by the circle of fifths. Isn't that how you tune up a violin? That's how you tune it up. You start with Saturn, and you move up 5. And you move up 5. That's how you're going to tune your harp. Don't have to, but that's the basic way you tune these things. So now, let's just tune things up. We're going to start with Saturn as a low note here on page 141. And we're going to move up 5. Now, we're not going to move up this list. We're going to move around the list, starting with Saturn. Let's move up 5. Saturn is the last. Saturn, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun. Saturn, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun. Bum, bum. Saturday, Sunday. Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Moon. Sunday, Moon Day. Saturday, Sunday, Moon Day. That's how it works. Tune it up. Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars. I'm going to run out of notes here. Mars. Mars Day is next, or in German, Tiersday or Tuesday. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Moon, Mercury. Mercury is Wednesday. Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter. Jupiter is Thursday. Jupiter, Saturn, Moon, Mercury, Venus. Venus is Friday's Day. We've tuned it up. Now that's where the days of the week come from. Those are the Greek days. Those are the Roman days. Those are the Indian days. Those are the Babylonian days. Those are the German days. Those are the days in all the civilizations of the ancient world that had this view of the sky. And it was the view of the week and the sky that was in the Hellenistic civilization at the time Revelation was written. Now remember, the world that God set up in Daniel has 2 or 3 aspects to it. We have always had the larger Gentile world, and within the larger Gentile world, we've always had the Jews, or Hebrews, as God's people. But with the restoration, God sets up a special group of people here, the guardian beast empire, to protect the Jews, and that culture is Hellenistic culture at this time. First it was Babylonian, then it was Persian, and then it was Greek, and now it's Hellenistic Rome. Rome as a Hellenistic culture. That's this culture. The book of Revelation is written to both of these cultures since they're both coming to an end. Remember? Both the harlot and the bad beast are coming to an end. Both mankind, which is the word for Jews in Revelation, and the peoples, tongues, nations, and tribes, which is a reference to the oikoumene, they're both coming to an end. And after the book of Revelation is finished, we're not going to have Gentiles anymore. We're not going to have Jews anymore. We're not going to have Greeks anymore. Sometimes the New Testament talks about Jews and Greeks. Sometimes it talks about Jews and Gentiles. Not the same. All this is gone. After AD 70, all you have is believers and unbelievers. You are not Gentiles. You are not Greeks. You aren't Jews. You're believers. But this whole system is going to go. Now, this beast empire was astrological in orientation, in the wrong way and in the right way. We know the Babylonians studied the stars. Everybody knows that. How about the Persians? Did the Persians study the stars? Yeah, because the Persian Magi knew when Jesus was born. And there's some interesting stuff in the book of Esther. You read the book of Esther and you find Ahasuerus has got these 7 nobles who serve him. And there are studies that indicate that these 7 nobles have got their names link up with the names of the planets. Now that's very speculative. But there's all kinds of symbolism in Esther, and these lists are interesting. How about the Greeks? Oh, well, the Greeks were full of this. They're the ones who came up with these crystal spheres and all this stuff. So it's not a surprise to us if Revelation has an implication for the form that natural revelation took in that part of the world. So what I'm trying to get us into here is the thought that in the book of Revelation we will retune the universe in connection with the new covenant. We have an original music of the angels, and now it's going to be retuned. And what we will find is the attributes of Jesus are given twice, once tuned and once retuned. Look at page 136, number 2, the qualities of God's attributes in Revelation 5:12. I've got Mercury and Venus have changed positions, but let's not worry about that. We'll come back to that problem. This is actually the order of sidereal periods that we just looked at. Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. The original period, untuned. Now, the moon has the meaning of reflected light. If you've got page 141 still in front of you, I've even given you the Hebrew names for the planets. The word Yareach means moon, but the moon is also called Lebona, which means white. The moon has to do with the attribute of power. Revelation 5:12, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive the power and the riches and the wisdom and the might and the honor and the glory and the blessing. This is an untuned order. It's going to come up again in a tuned order. But this is power, riches, wisdom, might, honor, glory, blessing. We want another one. Okay, we want an 8th. We take us back to 1 again. Power, riches, wisdom, might, honor, glory, blessing. Do you feel satisfied? No, now you do. Okay, that's how it works. God made this world this way. Everything links up in this world. It's how the world's made. If you don't like it, tough. Because this is the way the world's going to be forever. If you don't like the world, you have to get out of it and go to hell. The only rapture that's going to take place is the wicked are going to be raptured out of this nice world where everything fits and put into a place where nothing fits and nothing makes sense. But in God's world, everything fits and everything makes sense. Whether I've got it right or not, it still fits and makes sense. Somebody can come after me and do a better job. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I've got it exactly right. Power is the first attribute. Dunamis is power put forth. We associate that with the moon. Riches is associated with Mercury and wealth. We studied these attributes of the planets before. Wisdom with Venus and jealous love. Might with the sun. Shemesh, the Chama, is the word that means heat. Mars, honor, respect for attainment, war, in Hebrew, Ma'adim, which apparently means red. Jupiter in Hebrew is Tzedek, meaning righteous. Glory here is the attribute of Christ. Jupiter is associated with rule. And then Saturn in Hebrew, of course, is Shabbatai, Sabbath, and it's blessing. So these are the attributes: power, riches, wisdom, might, honor, glory, and blessing. Now, these get tuned up in chapter 7, verse 12. And that's on page 138. And which one are we going to start with? Well, we'll start with the low note, which is Saturn, which is blessing. So when we retune it, this first version went from the earth outward up to heaven, moon up to Saturn. The second version tunes it, starting with Saturn. Now, all we have to do is glory and wisdom are switched, and riches becomes thanksgiving, and we've got it. And you'll have to look at it, but the new order is blessing, glory, wisdom, thanksgiving, honor, power, and might, which is a tuned version here in Revelation 7:12 of the attributes in 5:12. Now, we begin to discuss why these things are switched, but what we get is blessing, glory, wisdom, thanksgiving, honor, power, might. We've tuned it up. Once the saints are set apart and the new covenant comes, the attributes are tuned, retuned. Chapter 5, verse 12, the angels are singing, worthy is the Lamb was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power, riches, wisdom, might, honor, and glory, and blessing, etc. But the saints, the new covenant, the newly tuned universe sings in chapter 12. After that happens, the angels and all the rest join with them saying, blessing, glory, wisdom, thanksgiving, honor, power, might. It's tuned. It's tuned from the base note up, from Saturn, and there are some switches because it's never simple. Thanksgiving is substituted for riches. Why? Well, riches lead to thanksgiving. That's not hard. Glory and wisdom are switched for reasons that we looked at back when we did this, and there's probably more to be said about that than I'm going to say. But that is that much I wanted you to see. The universe is retuned when the new covenant comes. We get a new cosmos. And one of the indications of it is the tuning of the sky, which in the ancient world was reflected in the fact that the days of the week are tuned. It's also reflected here in the tuning of the attributes of Christ as we get into the new covenant. Now, I think it's probably a good idea for me to stop here with this lesson and take back up next week, and we'll try to finish this off. I'll try to point out to you how the bowls and the trumpets and the seals in Revelation match these orders. In fact, we can just glance at that if you want. What page should I tell you to look at? Yeah, if you'll just look at page 140, it's kind of all out here. The moon represents power put forth. It's the first seal, a white horse. The first trumpet in the first bowl, judgments on Jews, who are the reflection of God's light in the world. The sun is the Messiah. The moon is the reflection of that light into the world, and so the judgment is on the Jews. The second, Mars, honor from victory. The second seal is the red horse of war. But the trumpets and bowls are tuned, and so it's the fifth trumpet and the fifth bowl, both of which have to do with armies, the armies of the beast. Mercury has to do with riches and thanksgiving. Mercury is the messenger who brings gifts from God. The third seal is the black horse that deals with the gifts from God, which are the oil and the wine and the bread, the sacraments. The second trumpet, and I've got this wrong, second bowl, is judgment on the Gentiles and their riches because they were not thankful. Venus is wisdom, jealous wisdom, the bride. It's the fourth seal, the green horse of the Levites, the warrior bride. It's also the third trumpet and the third bowl, which is the judgment on the springs of water, which is the Levitical temple. We've already seen all that. Jupiter, glory. The fifth seal, glory is given to the saints under the altar. The sixth trumpet, the sixth bowl, because this is tuned, are the armies of the saints, and so forth. We'll come back to that. But I'm trying to get you to say, what we're doing here just to end up again. Just for a little while, we're asking ourselves, okay, a Jew reading the book of Revelation has got the oracles of God, and he's looking at the Old Testament to interpret it. But this book is also written to Gentile God-fearers, and what they have is the rainbow in the sky. That's the sign for them. And the 7 colors of the rainbow break out into these other 7-fold things that we're looking at, and also the 12 constellations and the 7 and the 12 and other things. What would they have seen, especially since the book of Revelation is full of things that happen in the sky? I saw an angel flying in the sky. I saw 7 angels with 7 trumpets coming out into the sky. All kinds of stuff is taking place in the sky. So we're asking ourselves, what kinds of things would Gentiles have picked up from this, from the book of nature that Psalm 19 tells us they had? And we can only speculate. We can get some things. We can speculate on others. And I think it's fun. We're not going to stay on this forever, obviously. But I hope it's interesting to you and kind of helps you once again to see that this universe was designed by God. And everything in it fits together. And when you start conceptualizing how it's put together, we can physically understand how the solar system is put together, and that the planets go in elliptical orbits around the sun. The sun is one of the 2 foci of the ellipse that this goes around. The other focus is empty, but that's the way orbits work. And the moon goes around the earth and so forth. Physically, that's the clockwork of the universe. But it is also an artistic design to it, and we're looking at artistic design and how the ancients thought about it. And they saw that music was everywhere and color was everywhere, and all this built up in such a way that in the fullness of time, when Revelation was written, all of this could be in the background of what was being said. And how much it was in the background, I'm not sure. But it's surprising how much seems to be there. Any discussion?
This is slightly off subject, but what is your commentary on the discovery of the rock in Antarctica? Supposedly Mars is the life form.
The Mars rock? Well, let's look at it this way. My number one commentary is it's very easy to understand. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration wants money, so they come up with some preposterous thing that is going to make people interested in NASA and get them funding. Now, I would rather forget NASA and give total tax breaks to any private enterprise corporations that want to buy leftover boosters and put platforms out in space and start making crystals and other things that you can do out there. But here's Mars, and supposedly a meteor hits Mars and chips off a bit of Mars, and it goes through space, and eventually it comes and it lands on Earth. Now let's think about that. How fast does this meteor have to be going to hit Mars in order to break a piece of it off to where it has escape velocity and can actually leave Mars? Can you imagine that? I mean, we have to have these huge rockets to get us off the Earth. And we always put them around near the equator. You know why they don't blast rockets off from England, don't you? Because the Earth is only turning about this fast up there. You get near the equator and the Earth is moving faster. So you always get down the tip of Florida or Southern California or someplace like that to get the slingshot effect as you blast off. Well, if we've got to do that and have triple boosters and everything else in order to get off the Earth, Mars is not that much smaller than the Earth. It's got gravity too. And a meteorite just falling onto Mars would never do it. It'd just make an impact crater. Nothing would pop off the surface of Mars. The only way this could happen would be if this meteor is coming into Mars at a greatly increased velocity, really fast. And it has to be really big, because the piece of rock that it chips off of Mars has got to be big enough not to disintegrate in the Earth's atmosphere. This is preposterous at 2 levels. I mean, you've got to have this coming in. It has to be big and fast enough to knock a really big piece of Mars off. And the really big piece of Mars eventually gets near the Earth and comes in and doesn't completely burn up in our atmosphere, and there's enough left to where they can find it and say, yes, it's a little bit smaller than a brick. That's what they say. Well, that's really stretching it. In fact, I think it's ridiculous, and I think most astrophysicists do. Except for the newspaper reporters, nobody seems to be taking this very seriously. Plus, of course, you've got other problems. Supposedly, the stuff that's inside this rock from billions of years ago is a whole lot like the stuff that's on the surface of Mars today. But this rock is supposed to be from underneath the Martian surface. Well, if you know any geology, gases trapped in rocks underneath the ground are not the same as gases trapped in rocks that are on the ground. So if this thing came up from underneath the Martian surface and comes over here, it came over here, it was knocked off a billion years ago, and it's come here now, the gases that are trapped in this now are supposed to be the same as the gases that are on the surface of Mars now. There's no link. Plus, we don't know what kind of gases are trapped in rocks on Callisto and Ganymede and Io and various asteroids. All they know is what's on Mars because we've had a probe go there. So even if it came from someplace else, there's no reason to think it came from Mars and not from someplace else. So it's just baloney. Now, I've got no problem if there's life on Mars. If there are plants there, it's fine with me. It's perfectly fine with me to believe that God has got plants and animals living on lots of planets out in space waiting for us to get there and take dominion over them. That doesn't bother me. But this scenario is crazy. When I heard it, I thought this is about the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And yet,
the media did not question
no,
that rock came from Mars.
No, it was just crazy.
In Antarctica, and when you first listened to the media reports, it sounded like they got the rock off of Mars. Is what it first sounded like.
Oh, it's just crazy. And everybody that I'm reading on the net and other places say, "Oh, this is just NASA going for funding." But I'm just waiting for them to interview a few astrophysicists. This is